It's a great honor for me to represent Cornell University's Global Labour Institute here with you today. We work with my colleagues Lara Skinner and Jill Cubitt, and we've been working now for several years on promoting a science-based climate jobs agenda in the United States. We're trying to establish a foothold for this idea in the labour movement and in the policy world in the United States. We see it as a means of addressing two problems. The first is US emissions are abysmally high. They never go down. It's 22 tons per person. You know the figures in terms of the energy consumption and the emissions of every man, woman, and child in the United States. But secondly, there is an unemployment problem that is 10% in real terms, in its official numbers. But if you add in the real unemployment, the underemployed, you're getting closer to 20%. And then if you look at communities of colors and economically excluded groups, then you're talking about communities facing 25–30% unemployment. And we see that the only way to address this issue is a mass direct hire public works programs modeled on the New Deal in the 1930s at a minimum. And it's worth, I think, going back to that period where in the mid-30s in the United States, when facing high unemployment, the federal government hired 11.4 million people in the space of 2 years. This was at a time when the US labor force was half what it is today. They put people to work doing socially necessary work in schools, in hospitals, artists, musicians. They also laid down new infrastructure projects in the US. This is the kind of model the Civic Works Association and the Public Works Association that needs to be applied today in the context of the unemployment level in the United States, plus the emissions problems and the need to reduce emissions drastically. That system in the 30s, though, established a system based on cheap energy. We're now facing a climate jobs program. We need to confront the fact that there is energy scarcity in the US unless you're prepared to blow up mountains, use tar sands oil, frack your way into the future with natural gas, which is a high emissions and highly polluting form of energy. If you don't want to go down that road, we need to go down the road of energy conservation and clean energy and renewable energy. So we see the climate jobs program in the US very similar to the sort of things that James Mill and others have said, that it should first of all reduce emissions, or it should be part of an emissions reduction scenario or mitigation strategy. It should create decent work, and it should build unions and community power. For us, the transition, a climate jobs program is part of a much bigger social transformation. We don't think it's going to happen in the United States unless there is a qualitative expansion of social and democratic ownership of key economic sectors, particularly the carbon sectors. The oil industry, the coal, the gas, and the transportation sector. Without that, we don't think there will be a just transition, but we work for those two things simultaneously. Lastly, I'll just sum up by saying that if you look at the US energy system, a colleague of mine at Cornell said, it's like buying a 6-pack of beer and throwing 4 of them down the drain. The amount of wastage in the existing system is appalling. Modernization of the grid, of new technologies are helpful and will create jobs. Mass transport in the United States, public transport, is only available to 48% of Americans. So it's all very well to talk about trying to leave the car at home. The whole built environment is around the motor car, and that's not going to be changed quickly. So we need to scale up mass transit over the next 1, 2, 3 decades. The low-hanging fruit is also energy conservation. The amount of energy leaking out of buildings in the United States is phenomenal. A public works federal program hiring hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to retrofit and to modernize and weatherize the building sector in the United States would create many, many jobs. The rebuilding of the local food systems, waste management and composting are also good sources of climate jobs and work in the future. How do we pay for this? Senator Markey in the United States produced a report saying the oil companies had basically made $955 billion in profits in the last 10 years. The profits tax would be absolutely minimal. Although I would say if we really want to use that revenue, we should be taking the oil and coal and gas companies into public ownership and channeling those revenues into green renewable energy that can create real jobs. The idea of a windfall tax will just be a slap on the wrist. They'll carry on investing like they are now in fracking, in coal, in tar sands, and that's not the way to go. We need a different future. The atmosphere in this room suggests we are on the verge of creating the kind of vision that will mobilize millions on the streets, and we'll get that vision put into practice sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Sean. I'm looking forward to working with you in the United States to make a lot of those demands. Next we have our next session, and to all of the folks that spoke as well, thank you. It's called Climate Jobs, the Concept and Strategy. Experiences of existing climate jobs campaigns and initiatives. And first up, we have Jonathan Neal, the International Secretary of the Campaign Against Climate Change in Britain and the UK, and also one of the editors of the 1 Million Climate Jobs Report in the UK.